Boy, I really hope that you'll go back and listen to that on the website a few times, because there is such a great peace, feeling of peace, if that becomes part of you, that understanding that I'm trying to give a flavor of. The intellectual understanding, as I said, is of no use at all, but as it becomes part of you, as you know more and more that is the nature of God, then there's a great sense of peace which becomes readily available to you, and it's a useful tool to use whenever we're blindsided by something or anything like that. Let's just open it up to a wide open workshop now. Anybody that has anything they want to work with can jump right in. Do you want to do something, Ken?
Okay, this is Ken. I was just sharing with Lee during the break. I listened to a lot of Robert Adams lately, and he talks about self-inquiry and other techniques, meditation and so forth. But he said another way to become liberated is to simply surrender completely to God. And it sounded a lot like step 3 in AA, and I've been through a lot the last few years where I just felt, yeah, I'm ready to just give up all that crap and just, I trust Robert somehow. He resonates for me, and I just said, I'm doing that. And I've been doing that the last few weeks, and I felt terrific. I mean, it's like the weight of the world falls off my shoulders, and I just have a different attitude towards everything, and it's been very blissful and peaceful and liberating.
Yeah. See, that's the whole thing. And the caveat on that is, that's what happens if you surrender completely, if you can.
Yeah.
And whether or not you can is not within your power. You either find yourself able to do that, or in fact what you find is that as part of omni-activity, you become more and more able to do that. And that's the whole point. If you know that there's nothing but God, and there's nothing going on but God, and it's all good, which would be where you were if you surrendered everything, then you would arrive at a state of bliss. And the other comment I wanted to make is that it's only an illusion that it is not all surrendered. There is nothing going on but God. What you think of as an unsurrendered thing is in fact part of the omni-activity of God bringing to you a revelation of more of the nature of God, a more revelation or realization of the truth. So, what does Dulcie say? Let go or get dragged, But to get dragged is part of the process of bringing you to the point where you let go. Eventually, the futility of hanging on, getting dragged, becomes clear enough that we let go. So it's all part of omni-activity is what I'm saying. And if you're not able to surrender today, if you're not able to let go today, perhaps you will be tomorrow or next week. Or my experience is that the difficulties intensify until we get, until they bring us to that point. That's what I'm seeing in so many people that are talking with me, that everything is reoccurring and getting intenser and intenser, and my sense of that is that's a great part of omni-activity, that God is bringing us to the point where we will surrender and step into the next dimension, step into the next level of consciousness. And we're being driven to the point where we do the best thing we could possibly do for ourselves, because we have so many ideas about how things ought to be or how things ought to look and stuff like that, because of all our concepts. So that's why we have to be driven. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jump in, anybody.
Hi, Lee. This is Ann.
Hi, Ann. Nice to hear from you. I sort of missed you. You didn't talk last week.
I did not talk last week, but I'm going to talk this week.
Yay!
It's so good to be back. I did have that feeling of well-being you talked about on that meditation when we started today.
Yeah.
And
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it was really nice. And I listened to last week's class, and boy, there was a lot on there that I didn't hear. So I'm really going to make an effort to listen to that a couple times. And one of the things you mentioned last week was how you listened to Joel's tapes and pausing, and that it could take you up to 3 hours to do one tape. And I did that. Now that I'm only working a few days a week now, I have the opportunity to spend more time in spiritual work. So I was really impacted by pausing during and pondering and contemplating some of the things that I heard Joel say. And really, I sometimes don't get through a tape a day now. I think I was just kind of listening to Joel as I was listening to Joel while I did a bunch of other stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I would just take it in. But it just, like you say, it would just go back out. And I think I had, I was lifted by it. But what a big difference to pause and ponder and contemplate. I mean, it was really amazing to experience that. So that's my new way of listening to Joel now. So one of the things I wanted to kind of fill you in on some of the stuff. I remember when I think it was the Radical Kid work, I had an emotional reaction to a dead bee, and we had a really amazing discussion on that. And I can't possibly describe in the little time I have here what resulted from that, only to say that we know it's not me doing it. I mean, there's so much good that has come from that. I mean, I have this wonderful teaching, Pollinator Garden, and it just could go on and on and on. So that was definitely a wonderful thing that came out of that. And the kid script book it's been really neat to work with Karen on. And we don't have a book, of course, but we've she's just applying the principles. And I asked her if I could share one of them that happened. And one of them was her teenage son was having a very difficult time, and he actually told her he had a suicide letter, and she read it with him. And what she did was just amazing. I mean, I think most parents probably would have taken this kid to a psych ward or something or turned him in somewhere, but what she did was she pulled out her emotional list and her script and read them to him. And he just was so lifted.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, let them know who you are. Yeah, I love it.
and it was kind of like he was validated and someone understood him, and it just, I mean, he was pretty much fine after that, and it's been really cool to watch Karen actually work with those children like she does her kids in the script and kid work, and just there's no shaming, and she there is a Byron Katie worksheet for kids, and I mean, these kids, I mean, they'll even bring it up and say, I think you need to do a Byron Katie worksheet. And, when there's big turmoil going on, like they're fighting about something, she'll go in there and have a reenactment. And so they don't have to carry the story that they thought how it happened. She actually has them, okay, you were standing here, okay, you were standing here, then what happened? You thought, oh, it was an accident then. And she replays it. So it's just been amazing.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're just putting together and making notes of all these things. So who knows what's going to unfold with it. But I wanted to be sure to share that with you guys, that we are, well, actually she's working on it more than I am, but, so it's been a very cool thing. So
Yeah, I love it. I just love it. There's such a huge space for something like that to come into, and I've really been hoping that something like that would happen. I know of one lady in Australia who did that, and with children for a while, but I lost contact with her 15 years ago. But what a phenomenal idea to read your script list to your kid. I mean, wow, that just...
Yeah, I know. It's pretty. She relates so well with these kids with that, because she says, oh gosh, that reminds me of, and I think it's like parents feel they have to put on this thing that they've got it all together, but it's so much more effective.
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
like in AA, when I came into AA, I was pretty sure no one was as bad as me, and that proved to be false. But I use the scripting kid work with newcomers because they're kids too. They're children.
I love it.
And so they don't know I'm doing it to them, but I'm doing it to them too. And it's made working with newcomers so much more of a joy for me. They were kind of annoying after the scripting kid work. I thought, God, everybody's in kids, but you can help them through it. You can share your stuff. So that's been pretty good. So anyway, I think that's all. The only question I had, I got a little confused about when Joel talks about demonstration and fruitage, and what I got from it was like you can have fruitage from maybe like church prayers and like declarations of truth and things like that, but when it's God's power like coming from spiritual consciousness, then it's demonstration. Do I have that?
Correct. That's a funny word because it was very much used in the metaphysical practices like Christian Science back then, and demonstration, all it means is expression. Your demonstration is what you're doing, is what you're expressing, and okay. Our life and our experience is always a complete demonstration of the content of our consciousness. Is another way of saying one of those principles back in this kid book. We are demonstrating what we believe. We are demonstrating what we know, and sometimes that demonstration is because of the power of mind, which is real. And sometimes that demonstration is through the use of material powers, which are real, at the level of matter and at the level of mind. But that's all just part of the dream. And if we're silent and let God reveal itself, then that's the demonstration that is harmonious and beneficial and such like. But demonstration, as far as I can get from him, just means what you're expressing, And he keeps saying, like if you get a new spiritual truth, don't take it out there and tell people about it. Wait until you're demonstrating it. And what he means is wait till it shows in your life, And then he'll usually say, and then they will come to you and ask how it is that that's happening in your life and not in mine, and then it's time to teach. But the demonstration, is, and fruitage is exactly, what you are experiencing is your demonstration.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a thing happen a few weeks ago with one of my dogs that he had, the doctors said he had a malignant tumor in his mouth and needed to be removed, and I got caught up in that for a little bit there, and I was very sad. I practically, Steve would remind me he's not dead yet, and I got really in a bad place until one morning when I was meditating, and I just kind of amped up my spiritual work during that time, and what came to me was God's the only power, but it was such a feeling of that. It just I can't even explain it, and it was like we went to the doctor, dropped him off, and then all I could see was God everywhere in there. The whole thing was surreal. I mean, and then he came back, and I mean, it turned out to be this little benign tumor, or like
see?
this. It was like, oh, okay, well, all right, whatever. And but it was good for me to be able to see. Getting into it with my humanhood and Chubb and the beliefs and all that, and where that got me, and then having that experience in meditation, it was just good for me to have experienced that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. Gosh, I'm so happy you're online again. Yay.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, who else? Oh, I did get one other thing during one of the mornings last week. If you're still getting blindsided by your kid, or hijacked by your kid, go back to the Script and Kid book. And the way to do that, I was told, is to process one section a week, or in 3 or 4 days or whatever, but work with one section completely until you're done with that one. Like if it's step 3 of the script works, work with step 3, work with your kid and step 3 until it's done. And it's done when the kid thinks it's done, not when you think it's done. So take your time now, instead of trying to do one a week and stuff like that. Go forward, and you may be on session 13 with one kid, and all right, so that's the place to stop. But read each section and see if you're complete with it. And part of seeing if you're complete with it means talking to, or dialoguing or relating with your kid and making sure that your kid is complete with it. And that means, in fact, with each kid. And you may, as we say, you may have different kids that are different places in the book. And the thing to do is stop reading through the book and getting 10% of it, but go to a section where you're not done with it, How are you doing with 100% responsibility, With respect to each script, where are you? And stay with that. I think Christy was doing a workshop in her house with people, and I think they stayed on 100% responsibility for 10 weeks because they weren't done with it. So that's the way to work with the book now. If you're still doing the kid work, and all of us, or most of us are, find out where you're at and work there. And stay there until that work is done, then move on. It's like the steps, Until you've done step 7, you can't do step 8. Who else? Jump in, somebody. Lots of time.
Hello, Stacy.
Please.
I'm glad. Thank you for saying that. I've been hijacked by my kid
Okay.
this week, and pretty much I'm alone now because I've attacked everyone close to me, so they don't come near me now.
Okay, good. That'll give you some peace and time to work.
Yeah, and and then I thought, well, this is an opportunity to love my kid because there's no one that's going to love me right now, so I can just work on it. And but I just realized, like, I'm not realizing, like, when scripts are happening. Like, my mom said, I'm going to take Everly to Hawaii again, and I got this script that I'm going to lose control, and you're going to do something without my permission. You're just going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't even know if it's true, but I was like, you're never doing that again. And so she obviously has a script, whatever. And then she goes, you have venom. You're spewing your venom at me. And we just got into it, and now we're not talking to each other. But, I realized, like, my scripts are just, like, strong, and I'm going to protect them. And I love what you shared, because I think I'm to the point now where I'm, like, I'm beaten down enough, where I'm just, like, enough. I just feel like I'm going to stop trying to fix my daughter's weight. I'm going to stop trying to fix my relationship with my husband. I'm going to stop trying to fix my relationship with my mom, my sister. I'm just going to stop trying.
Great. If you can. If your kid will let you.
I'm hoping. I'm going to go back.
And if she won't, there's your work. There's your work until she will.
Yeah. But I think a lot of it is I'm trying to make these things okay, and
Which
it's
means
like it's impossible.
Which means you're not trusting God.
No. And no matter how much I try, it doesn't work. It's funny what you said, like how that the situations will reoccur and become more intense. They are. They're reoccurring and they're becoming more intense.
Yep.
It's almost like funny sitcom.
I remember my sponsor, Susan, telling me, I think I shared this, I may have shared it with you last week. She smiled at me, we were talking about, well, they're wrong, their understanding is wrong. And she smiled sweetly and says, well, never worry, if it's not God, it won't work. So, that's on the activity, by the way. If it's not God, it won't work. So, trust it that you will get brought to where you believe in God, and believe it deeply enough that it transmits through you to your kid.
Well, when you shared, I felt it. I was like,
see?
That's true. It doesn't matter what I do. It's already going to do what it's going to do. So just stop and thank you. But I need to go back.
But if you go deep into meditation, then when you get to the vet, it may turn out to be a small benign tumor, whereas had you not gone into that deep meditation, it might have turned out to be a much more serious operation. The change in your consciousness is what determines your experience. None of this has anything to do with anything that's real out there, but the change in your consciousness is the fruitage, the demonstration of the change in your consciousness is what you experience out there. And
like doing the 22-minute again, all of it.
All of that,
And all of it.
Yeah. Go back to everybody that's still being blindsided by a kid, go back to the book and proceed through it very slowly and make sure you're done with each section, before you move on to the next one. And remember that you may be at different sections with different kids. Cool, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Dulcie.
Hey, Dulce.
Dulcie.
Hi, everybody. I remember explicitly one of Joel's tapes that said the fruitage of this work is non-reaction. And I thought about that, and I thought, oh my God, it's true. And especially like if it's kids, there's a difference in responding on the spot, which is God activity, and reacting. And if I'm in reaction and I'm feeling something going on, then I'm got to go back and investigate. And
Yep.
I remember the old timers always used to telling me in AA, which actually absolutely is what you're saying. And what I do is, if you're not successful working whichever step, if you're in kid step, script step, or 12 steps, or any other step, and it's not working, move back to the one previous.
Yep.
And I have never found that to fail, which is what you're saying, and it works the same in the 12 steps. And the old timers used to tell us, hey, as you said, God activity is, if it works, don't fix it.
Yep.
You know, and it's like, we always try to keep fixing something, or if I'm reacting, let's fix it out there. And I cannot do that now. I have to go back within. Why am I reacting? What's going on? Or what's my script? What's the deal here? And so then I know that I, like you said, I have to meditate more and be quiet more. And the fruitage is, I would say, my reaction is non-reaction. Mm-hmm. Is probably 90 to 95% now. Yep. Which is amazing. And I forget it. I mean, I'm shocked, that I immediately drop in, or whether it's a piece of news or a telephone call or whatever, I respond, and my response is to go directly to the withinness. And that's fruitage. That is fruitage after 40 years. Hello, I hope a little fruitage, So, anyway, it's funny how the old AA slogans apply to this level of dimension that we're talking about. If it works, don't fix it. And I remember when I had trouble with the concept of God, I had to, and it still works for me. And when I say, what do I think of God, I was always good, orderly direction. But what I am and have been for many years now is whatever works. That is my activity of God, whatever's working. If it's working, it's God. And that's just my experience. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, Robert Adams used to say that too. He didn't quite say that was the fruitage, but he said, if you want to know where you're at spiritually, observe your reactions. It's the same thing, The fruitage of high spiritual growth is non-reaction, which is also known as peace. Yeah, thank you. Right on.
Hey Lee, it's Karen.
Hi, Karen.
How are you?
I'm good. Nice to hear you.
I'm so glad, like everybody said last week, that we're back on. I've noticed that when we weren't in the class, still being in the work, and but like you said last week, there's so much coming at that we need to raise that level, and I could see I was really lacking, so I'm definitely glad to be in it. And like Ann was saying, stopping that tape and not just taking it in has really been a big difference. So I'm really enjoying that. One thing I had to chime in. Ann was talking about the kids, and funny, but it's with these kids. I feel so lucky that I almost get to watch and walk them through, but it's me. It's like I can see one of my kid aspects in all of them, and as she was saying with my oldest, right before we got on the class, I had a glitch, she had a glitch, and I was sitting here, and out of nowhere, we had an old filing cabinet, and I got out of my room, I said, get your shoes on, and we went outside, we grabbed the kids' baseball bats, and we beat the hell out of this filing cabinet, and took that rage and anger that's been kind of sitting there, and it is amazing to have this in my life too, because it is not my doing. You know, how to parent these kids and walk them through these scenarios. So
it's footage and it's demonstration of the work you've been doing. You know?
It really, it's just like, you know, I was telling Ian the other day, one of them came home and, you know, was a little off with schoolwork, and he came up with this headache and then a sore leg, and I mean, it just to stop and be in the presence with that for a minute. I was like, oh my God, I remember when I was 12 and I wanted to play sick, and I actually went to the hospital and they took my appendix out. I can so relate. And I mean, they just look at me sometimes like I've done lost my mind, but it's truth, you know, so it's been really interesting.
Cool. Yeah. I love hearing the work you're doing. That's just so wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so necessary to, well, I don't know, necessary is a strong word, but there is so much room for introducing this type of work to children at like 3 or 4 even, you know? I just think it's so important it's such a gift to them to open their eyes to this at an early age. And there's no reason it can't be done except nobody knows how to do it. Nobody even thinks about it.
Yeah, like Dan was saying, you know, it just, I mean, I see that you take that list that I made up, you know, and if I look at the kids, it's right about those age that those events took place.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, it's, you know, I go to the school and I'll, you know, see kids that are like sitting by themselves and they're, you know, the kids all say, what's going on? Well, he's not good, you know, that he's not acting right or he's not behaving right and, you know, I was able to tell my kids, I said, you know, imagine if when your feet hit the ground in the morning that you're getting told no matter what you do, it's never good enough, and then you go to school and you're isolated in that, you know. Why don't we try to see, you know, the good in it? And it has. I am seeing the fruitage of it most of the time.
Yeah. Most of the time is wonderful.
It is spring break, so it might be a different story next week.
Or not, depending on what you see.
All right. Well, thank you, and I'm glad to be back.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here too. Great work.
Thanks.
Hi, Lee. Joanne.
Hey, Joe.
So I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you to everybody who shared the last 2 weeks. I was a little distracted during the call last week, but I felt lifted right away. And then I listened to the recording several times, you know, and each time I felt a drop in and just a really awesome, I don't know, transmission. So thank you so much. And I just felt like I've been more aware, more conscious, more telling myself the truth, like doing little interventions on myself whenever I notice that I'm in emotion and arguing with what is. Anytime that I'm not loving what is, I've been, you know, dropping in and having some dialogue. And interesting what Stacey was saying about getting triggered by a lot of other people, and then pretty soon it's the only comfortable place is to be by yourself. And I
I've had that a little bit, but I realize that I kind of need that. Otherwise, I'm engaged a lot with people. So I've been quiet, a lot more quiet, meditating every single day, automatically waking up at 6, boom. So I just felt like I'd have more access to that which makes all of this, that which can open up and notice the omnipresence, the omniscience, the omnipotence, and that actually is fundamentally the truth of everything. And just to stop judging, to stop being overwhelmed and hijacked by the judgments of the kids. And I have been going back and doing the script work, like you mentioned. Mostly I've been writing to my kids. And just saying it out loud when I notice that I'm in script. And especially if I'm talking to somebody who knows what that means. So I think that's it. I'm super grateful. I took really great notes today of like every single thing that you said, which is really a good way for me to be really present with it and not wander off. And I really appreciate the whole part about God is finished, complete, fulfilled, harmonious bliss. It's good. And that's the fundamental truth of what I am. Just to remind myself of that. Mm-hmm. I've also been listening to lots of Byron Katie, and I've been doing the inquiry. I've been saying, is that true? Is that really true? Can you know that to be true? And it's popping the bubble quickly.
Yep.
And then, of course, I love to say in like what Byron Katie said to her right-hand number 1 student when his infant child was in the emergency room, maybe going to die, and she literally walked up and said, "There is no baby." And I've been pulling that card, too, with myself. Like, the imagined Joanne that you think you are isn't real, you know. So, it's working, and yet I have just enough angst that I won't move more than like 6 inches away from any of this right now, which is kind of a blessing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm definitely not getting what I want in at least 10 areas. And that is keeping me very dedicated to my spiritual practice.
I hear you. Yep. Thank you. That's wonderful.
I love you.
I love you too. That's wonderful. And everything you're saying, everything everybody's saying, this whole discussion, this whole workshop is fruitage and demonstration of the work we did in Radical Kid last spring, and the work we've all been doing. It's very clear to me that this stuff is working. I just feel I'm rejoicing in hearing all the things that are going on. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that my kid has my attention in a way that is really pretty beautiful, actually.
Cool. Yeah.
And there's not a lot that I can do to distract myself from it because nothing that I'm like chasing is doing it for me, Mm-hmm. So that's really good for the unintegrated parts of myself.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Speaking of being triggered, it seems to be kind of a theme. I've been part of a writing and intentions group for the last 3 or 4 years. That's monthly, and that has been extremely important and useful to me. And I always come out feeling lifted. And yet, on occasion, there's one person there that I'm getting triggered by. Like, it's one person who has a whole lot of anxiety,
And she has a lot of kids talking to her, like she has a lot of her own kids and scripts talking to her, I think, about how she's not good enough or whatever. And sometimes I find myself, yesterday, I was finding myself having a hard time meditating and writing and sitting and working because her energy was just so spilling over, her anxiety was so spilling over. And I think what I'm looking for are maybe some, it feels like there must be a muscle that I can exercise here, and it might look like remembering that I am God. It might look like remembering that she is God. It might look like asking my kids, asking my kids what's wrong. There's wrong something in me. It might even be looking at I did this check to see am I reading her script? I don't think so. And then I kind of realized today maybe I am. She has a strong script of not being good enough, and maybe I'm reading her script because I think she's not good enough because she thinks she's not good enough. Does that make sense? So suggestions, please.
Everything you said is right on. All of the above is the correct answer. You know? Yes, if you knew who she was, then there would be no difficulty with it. And if you knew who you were, there would be no difficulty with it. And if she is well. Because if you knew who you were, then you would know who she was. I mean, you can't know who you are and not know who she is, and you can't know who she is and not know who you are. So that's the same thing. These next 10 or 12 weeks is what I'm hoping to do is give us enough foundation that we can drop into that place where you know who she is, and we'll talk about Ho'oponopono in a while, and which is the healing consciousness, and that's the sort of thing to do. I'm so glad you keep bringing up Ken. I'm glad that you keep bringing up Robert Adams. Robert Adams always used to say to people, that's what you see. And that's it. That's what you see. And its reality is no deeper than that. That's what you see. Here you are looking at God, and you're seeing script. And were your consciousness sufficiently high, then you would not be seeing script, and she would not be having that experience, because your high consciousness would lift her out of it. And this is all the spiritual healing, spiritual revealing stuff. But all you can do is know who she is as much as you can know who she is, and if you can possibly not read her script and demonstrate to her that this time it didn't happen, then that's wonderful. You've done her a service. I remember Barbara Mull talking about one of her daughters calling her and on the phone and reading her the riot act about this, that, or the other thing. She had one daughter who was particularly feisty, and she was talking about, she said, I hung on and I hung on and I hung on, and I said, yes, dear, and I listened and I listened, and I was not going to read her script, And then she accused me of being a bad mom. And I lost it. And okay, so she too was doing the very best she could until she couldn't, and she apparently stayed in there 12 sentences too long. So, we do the best we can to know who they and we are. And and get quiet. And you know, it's a muscle building thing. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason for this class is to give us tools to deal with situations like this. And one of the tools we're going to have eventually, and maybe I can introduce it right now, is an interesting question to ask yourself about any truth is, what would my behavior look like if I believed that? You know, how would I treat this person if I believed she was God? How would I behave if I believed I was God? So this is going to be a yardstick that perhaps will apply. I don't know what it's going to look like as we go on, but I know that that's going to be coming up a lot. You know, what would my behavior be? What would my behavior look like if I really believed that all there was God, or if I really believed God was omnipresent, or if I really believed God was omnipotent, or omniscient, or omniactive? If I really believed that every activity I see is part of God's process of unfolding itself to itself as me, you know, how would I behave? So you might see if that is a useful tool for you.
Actually, that sounds incredibly useful to me, because what it brings up for me is I can immediately see the contrast between how I would act if I believe that versus how I'm acting now.
Yep, exactly.
And it occurs to me that it's even the kind of thing, like the kind of prompt I could maybe write down on a card and bring around with me, you know?
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, Barbara used to have flashcards, and that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Leah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lee, hi, this is Anya.
Hi, Anya.
Hi, Lee. Hi, everyone. And I just wanted to touch on something that can really get me caught up if I'm not careful. And you were talking about demonstration and fruitage, and that the outpicturing of our consciousness is, or that our fruitage is essentially the outpicturing of our consciousness. And if I'm understanding correctly, and where I've gotten really tripped up with that in the past is, as a doer, workaholic, kind of obsessed with controlling things, I can easily go to, well, if I just meditate harder, if I just meditate more, then I'm going to be able to change the outpicturing of my consciousness to what I want it to be. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that hasn't worked for me. And it's ended up totally biting me in the butt.
Yeah, no,
Can you talk about that for just a moment?
Absolutely, yeah. You cannot try harder.
My kid thinks she can always try harder.
Right.
Never try hard enough.
It's entirely kid work. If God is the only power, with what are you going to try harder? Yeah, we're where we are, and we're doing the best we can with what has been revealed to us so far. We're at the level of consciousness we're at, and a certain amount of our true nature has been revealed to us, and a certain amount of that has been realized by us, so that it is part of us, and other part isn't. And you know, well, I'll get there later. If you were, you know, if part of the omni activity were meditating more, you would be meditating more. You know, again, I mentioned last week, Ram Dass said that we're always on the optimal path for our spiritual development. And what that means is that what you're doing right now is optimal for your spiritual development. And if you were to meditate more, you would be doing so. Because we're always on the optimal path for our spiritual development, which is to say God, the God activity, the omni activity would have you meditating more, you know? I mean, I didn't start spending 3 hours listening to a tape, a 1 hour tape, until, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago. And, you know, I can say things like, boy, would I have progressed fast if I'd started that 30 years earlier, you know. But the fact is that I was not capable of doing it 30 years earlier, or 20, or 10, or 5 years earlier, you know.
Well, where this really got painful for me was a few years ago, where I was working really closely with Paul, and we were working on basic, and this is just, you know, my interpretation of it, that basically shifting my consciousness so that Alon's symptoms would improve, so that the appearance of whatever physical thing might be going on would change. And now I know, okay, I knew, in hindsight, I now know what I was doing, and that's not how it works. But I can get really tripped up when I hear that the fruitage that I see in my life is the outpicturing of my consciousness, because I can interpret that as I just have to work harder at shifting my consciousness to change the outside world. So I don't know if that's helpful to anyone, or if you want to speak to that.
Yeah.
Oh, I do.
Is that Dulcie? Yeah, go.
Well, I hope you'll let me, because this was the hardest thing for me, until it was made so simple that the outpicturing of my state of consciousness simply means I'm observing the third dimensional world, not the fourth, fifth, or sixth, which means I'm simply in the dream. And it's not personal what is in my consciousness. It's impersonal, universal junk. But all I had to get down to was, I'm seeing out there, not in here. And then I could let myself off the hook. I simply had fallen asleep and was looking at the 3D, rather than the inner world. And what a relief, because I was guilty, didn't study enough, and I was doing tons, as you guys know, like you are. And, oh, I'm looking out there. Oh, that's my state of consciousness. I'm looking out there. Period. End of story. And, oh, what a relief. Thank you. I don't know if that's a help or not.
It certainly is. Yeah, I mean, thank you, Dulcie. And, you know, there certainly is no room for guilt or even responsibility or beating ourselves up, because it is true that my experience is a reflection of my consciousness. But yeah, I personally did not put this consciousness together. This is what has been given to me. It was given to me by parents and upbringing and conditioning, and you know, I've never had any, as we were saying a little bit earlier, I've never had any real control over my level of consciousness, and I didn't have any control over what information was put into it, and you know, it's all just omni activity taking place, and so it's not. what's in your consciousness has nothing to do with anything Alon may be experiencing, because Alon is experiencing Alon's consciousness and you are experiencing your consciousness. But, yeah, and bring this back up again when we get to Ho'oponopono, but the fact that, and I expect what Paul was trying to say, although I certainly wouldn't have said it that way, but the fact is that you are seeing Alon's affliction. And that means that it's part of your consciousness. And what that really means is that it's part of human consciousness, that you have not yet shown sufficient light on it to not see it anymore. But this is a very, very high healing consciousness that we're talking about, having enough light to not see something. But this is what Joel did with his spiritual healings. This is what Jesus did with his spiritual healings. Pick up your bed and walk. He didn't see a cripple. So if I were high enough to not see that, I would be a great healer. And I'm not high enough. The conditioning is here, and the conditioning that I've had for all my years, and it goes on, and it's continually being reintroduced by everybody and everything I encounter, and it's continually on television, and and my active work is to catch that. We'll talk about this a lot during the class. My active work is to catch the lies when they're presented to me and correct them. And that process slowly will move that truth from an intellectual thing that I'm using to correct the lie down into my experience. And once again, and we talked about this a lot in Radical Kid work, the correcting and correcting and correcting. Knowing truth, seeing the truth, lovingly. But, yes, I too, my consciousness is not high enough to not see various people's afflictions, including my own. My consciousness is not high enough to see the afflictions that I'm working on. And that's my work. But it's not, it's not my fault. I'm where I am. I've always been doing the best I could because there's no other possible alternative. And it's not my responsibility to raise myself or heal anybody or fix anybody. If that were my responsibility, I would be doing it because Omni-activity would have me doing it. So right now Omni-activity has me watching it and working on it, and it's all working perfectly, and there's no possible room for any guilt or regret or anything like that. It's if I were supposed to be at a different level of consciousness, I would be as a result of Omni-activity. It would have me there. This is how much has been revealed to me now, because this is what this particular individualization of God looks like, and I need to be fine with that. Does that help any, or does it exacerbate, or what?
No, that helps a lot. Thank you. And it's one of those things that, because of my upbringing, I get really tripped up by, and so I constantly have to hear what you just said and what Dulcie also said is just, that if I were meant to be seeing or experiencing something different, I would be, and that it's not up to me to change where I am. It's more about trusting that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now, doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, nor can you change where you are, except by meeting each situation that's in front of you as it presents itself with the highest truth you can bring to it.
Mm-hmm.
My sponsor Susan also used to tell me, just meet each situation with your highest consciousness and you will grow spiritually. And I say, why is that? And she says, because if it works, it will be confirmed and you will grow spiritually. And if it doesn't work, you'll know you have work to do and you will grow spiritually. So the answer is meet everything, every situation with the highest consciousness that you happen to have at the moment. And that's all you can possibly do. And that process of doing that will raise your level of consciousness.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing
Thank you,
that
Anya,
up.
for bringing it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
One more thing, the greatest gift Joel gave us was the one thing that you don't hear in most of other teachings, and that's the impersonalization. The principle that it's impersonal.
Yep.
And even script, while we're doing our script work, and as my first sponsor told me, don't get personally involved in your own life. You know, it's like, it's impersonal. And it's hard to feel real guilty if it's impersonal, but I managed for many, many years and still can. But anyway, thank you.
Absolutely. It's absolutely impersonal. It's the level of consciousness we're at. And use the sense of guilt as a huge red flag that you're not seeing clearly. If there's any guilt in you at all about anything, you're not seeing clearly. There's no question about it. You don't understand the situation. You don't understand who you are. You know, there is no possibility, since there is no personal sense even, since there is nothing other than God, there is no possibility of guilt. So use that as a flag. And take that one within. I don't want to drag on too late. It's after the hour now. So,
Thank you.
So let's sit for a couple minutes and let that settle, and then we'll go on about our business. What a good workout today. I love you people. You guys are just great, and everybody's working so hard, and it just really brings me joy to be a part of this process. Okay, thank you. I love you all. See you next week.
Thank you.
Wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good week. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.